Crossover Thursday on Locked On Browns. We are joined by John Hickman, Locked On Texans. This is a big one. If there's one team that can understand what the injury bug is like for the Houston Texans, it's the Cleveland Browns, and for the Cleveland Browns, it's the Houston Texans. John and I are going to break it all down now.
Woo!
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is Crossover Thursday on the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. John Hickman, part of the dynamic duo over at Locked On Texans. This game, I'd say a couple weeks ago, had a lot of flavor to it. Now, not so much, but we appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. And, of course, Locked On Texans. And if you are not part of the everyday crowd, get on the bus, Gus, and make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and the Locked On Browns podcast on YouTube. And, of course, the shows are always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code, all lowercase, Locked On NFL for a first deposit match up to $100. As I said, Jeff Lloyd, John Hickman here, Locked On Browns, Woo! Locked On Texans. John, now a couple weeks ago, obviously Houston Texans looked like this, maybe a year too early team, really, really doing well. A couple of rookies really flashing. Obviously, whatever comes to the rest of this year for CJ Stroud, that offensive rookie of the year is locked up and has probably been locked up since about Halloween. But the Texans are in a tough spot here right now because you do have some young talent, whether it's Will Anderson, whether it's Nico Collins, of course, CJ Stroud. Yes, it'd be great to get to the playoffs this year, but what Demeco Ryans and these young players are building is supposed to be about the next decade. So it's tough where you may have gotten here early and you had a shot this year at the 2023 playoffs, but the whole thing here has got to be the long game in Houston, no?
The long game in Houston is very important, but I also think success right now adds to that.
8 wins ain't going to be nothing to sneeze at in a first-year head coach with all of these young players.
No, not at all. Listen, 8 wins after 3 last year, 4 the year before that, 4 the year before that, and that was with former Houston Texan, now current Cleveland Brown quarterback Deshaun Watson. 8 wins is something to definitely be proud of, but I think now that Houston is in a building stage, for the longest it was rebuilding. Now they are building. I think if they close out the year strong, winning some of these games, including Sunday's matchup versus you guys, the Cleveland Browns, at home, I think for Houston, the next decade matters right now. Right now goes into the success of the next decade. If Houston becomes a playoff team, right, regardless if they go in and win or not, now you're looking at the next offseason and thinking to yourself and saying to free agents, hey, look what we can do. We got still a rookie quarterback. We got a great DN, rookie D, now going into his second year, DN and Will Anderson. We got John Grenard, who Houston brings back, right? We got Christian Harris. We got Tank Dell. We got Nico Collins. We got Demeco Ryans. We got a lot of pieces, and we just came off of a playoff opportunity, playoff game. And so for Houston, I don't want to sneeze at, just 8 wins, right? I think making a strong push to the playoffs not only helps the morale of the locker room right now when you got guys that have never seen the playoffs, right? Nico Collins or some of the other guys, but the guys that brought in Dalton Schultz, we made the playoffs in Houston just like I did in Dallas. I want to stay here in Houston. Shaq Mason signed that extension, so he's not going anywhere. But some of the key vets that were brought in over the offseason and during the season, Derek Barnett, to say the least, they're going to want to stay. And then you got guys around the league. This is a playoff team. This is the great city of Houston, the best city in America, right? They got a great quarterback. They got a lot of pieces. I want to go play for that team. I want to go play for their quarterback, which is why I think the biggest storyline right now for Houston is in what way can they pull off this victory against the Cleveland Browns at home? How can they keep their playoff hopes alive throughout the injuries that they're going through, that injury bug, and now no CJ and possibly no Nico Collins, who did return back to practice on Wednesday? How can they get it done? That's the biggest storyline for Houston. A lot of adversity, but I believe they can get it done.
Yeah, and it certainly helps. Look, when you hire Demeco Ryans, you take him out of that San Francisco regime, and obviously he's already dipped into that pipeline. And look, San Francisco, as good as they are, they ain't gonna be able to keep everybody. And guys who can't stay, first place they're probably gonna be looking is, well, hey, I know my man Demeco got me, and he probably got a spot for me down in Houston. And look, it's the AFC South, and Jacksonville may have looked really good last year, fluttering down the stretch here this year. And all of a sudden, if you're going to say I'm a betting man, who do I think's got the best future in the AFC South over the next 3, 4, 5 seasons? I got to be honest, for me, I'd be putting my money probably on the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud has been incredible. I even said going back to the combine, it wasn't a good look for Bryce Young to not compete that day, because the thing he didn't have was he didn't look the part like a CJ Stroud, size-wise, arm-wise. Certainly Anthony Richardson. Those guys went out, had a day, and it put Carolina in a really, really difficult position. And look, we already seen what's done to Carolina, obviously, the things they had, in the things they've already blown out. And now who's going to come to the aid in Carolina? You don't have a first-round pick, and you got a quarterback who had a really, really tough rookie year. So obviously tough, for Carolina Panthers that year. All benefited certainly the Houston Texans. Houston would love to win this game. Of course they would. And for one of the other reasons would also be is another loss for the Browns means that first-round pick, the last of the Deshaun Watson first-round picks, gets a little bit lower in the pecking order. But for the Browns, this was supposed to be the cruise control part of the schedule, how they were going to get here, how they were going to navigate it. Their wins that were unexpected, obviously the San Francisco 49ers losses that were unexpected, week 2 in Pittsburgh when you give up 2 defensive touchdowns. The Seattle game, the way that one fell apart, I still feel if Dorian Thompson-Robinson had not left the Denver game, that game was changing momentum-wise, and the Browns were looking like they were going to pull that game off. But then you throw Joe Flacco into the mix, this 38-year-old quarterback with a rocket arm who nobody seemed, and we don't know the whole deal. Did Joe maybe tell, his agent, everybody, look, cut it in half. I'm only, I got kids. I'm not going all the way across the country for 4 months. Look, if somebody's interested, they're within a 6-hour car ride. My family can come see me. I'm still kind of integral in my kids' lives for these few months. Maybe that was the deal. But the Browns, obviously in a great, great situation with Joe right now. They've always had this problem during even the best of times for Coach Stefanski is trying to exploit the vertical game. Well, you get 2 50-yard completions last week in the fourth quarter against the Chicago Bears. Joe Flacco throws for 212 yards. Last 2 games, David Njoku's got 19 receptions. Why? Because you have defensive backs that have to play further away from the action, which means David Njoku, and there ain't a linebacker pretty much in the entire NFL who can run with him. So if he's got all that space to work with, he's going to find daylight. And now defensive backs are running up, and he's an extremely difficult guy to tackle because he is 6'4", 250, and basically can jump out of the gym. So for the Browns, this is key. Granted, Houston is a lot better than anybody thought they were going to be when you looked at the schedule originally. The Jets are a lot worse than you thought they were going to be the early part of the season when you thought it was going to be an Aaron Rodgers-led team. The Bengals, week 18, this has always been a team, the Browns, even when Joe Burrow was healthy, the Browns have always fared very well against Joe Burrow. So that is not something that they were hugely concerned with. But the Browns, with a big 3-game stretch here, have the advantage of that 1-game lead. They don't want that 1-game lead to be an issue. You control your own destiny. This is about the time where you start putting your foot on the gas pedal and start closing out and getting to that finish line. And we'll see how this all plays out here. We're going to get to some biggest matchups here. What would a path for victory to be for the Browns Sunday? Certainly for the Texans. Jeff Lloyd, John Hickman, Locked On Browns, Locked On Texans, crossover Thursday. Nobody go anywhere. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers Stay Hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a much, much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Jeff Lloyd, John Hickman, Locked On Texans, Locked On Browns, crossover Thursday. We appreciate everybody who makes our shows their first listen every day. And the everyday crowd, look, you don't need no money. You don't need no ticket. just hit subscribe on the YouTube channel, and you guys are in the club. John, we are getting, obviously, and it's a little early, and this time of year, and look, the Browns even scaled back their practice today to basically just a walkthrough. The Browns will play this game Sunday. You're dealing with all the monotony of Christmas, Christmas Eve, Sunday, Christmas Day, and then the Browns got to go next Thursday against the New York Jets. They took today's practice down to a walkthrough, and this is a team that's played a lot of 60-minute ball games, just trying to do their best to make sure their guys are as mentally sharp and physically sharp as they possibly can be here for this 3-game stretch. But some storylines for you and some key matchups here that you're looking for as far as, the Houston Texans here versus obviously the Cleveland Browns Sunday, 1 o'clock in Houston.
I'm looking for the guy that you just said, David Njoku, who has been a favorite for Joe Flacco. I'm looking for Christian Harris, who bounced back in a big way against the Tennessee Titans last week, doing a very good job of making sure that the flats were taken care of, not giving Derrick Henry any room to breathe. The week prior was, I think he just had some trouble in terms of covering some of those crossing routes. But I'm looking at David Njoku and the Christian Harris battle. How can he take away Joe Flacco's number one guy right now? I think out of the 19 catches, he's had, 25 targets, nearly 30 targets since Joe Flacco has started a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And I think when you're looking at the Browns team being able to move the ball, that's a big reason why, right? If you got a tight end that's able to move and get that yak yard, which is what he's been good at the last couple of weeks, you're going to have a difficult day defensively, which is what Houston bounced back and was able to take away from the Tennessee Titans. So I'm looking at Christian Harris, the linebacker, second year, who has played very good for Houston. Lost some snaps early in the year, came back and did a very good job, and also found a nice little tidbit. According to PFF, he has only allowed 5 catches for 35 yards and 25 yak yards while in man coverage. So for Christian Harris, Houston has to make Joe Flacco's job hard, right? They cannot allow him to get comfortable. Once their pockets collapse from the inside out, he's not going to be able to move around. He's not a mobile quarterback. So taking away his options immediately and giving your D-line that opportunity to make plays up front, that is the key matchup that I'm looking at. And, of course, Derek Stingley Jr. versus Amari Cooper. I think that's going to be pretty fun, those SEC boys, one from Bama, one from LSU. I'm looking forward to that matchup.
And, for the Browns, that could be a case where, hey, Derek Stingley, there's Amari Cooper. You guys do whatever you got to do for 60 minutes because I think Joe Flacco is probably going to do everything he can to probably try to avoid that matchup. And he's done a really, really good job over the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, gets David Bell involved in a 41-yard touchdown out of nowhere. Last week, Marquise Goodwin, huge 53-yard reception that basically opened the floodgates for the Browns' 3 scoring drives in the fourth quarter that led to them ultimately, taking out the Chicago Bears 20-17. Elijah Moore was quiet last week, but Elijah Moore has been effective. He and Joe Flacco obviously have a little bit of that relationship from their time together with the New York Jets. That was working well. The Bears made it a little bit more of an onus last week to take that away. Some things I'm looking forward to, and this is something that I had spoken on, John, about when the Browns, Joe Flacco came in. There's not a lot for the Browns to look at in regards to Case Keenum. You got one game. And obviously with a quarterback, he goes in and yes, he's a veteran. He knows everything, but you see what was good in the Tennessee game. You see what was bad. So obviously Houston's going to take some out of what their game plan was last week. And then you try to cater to some things that you think might work a little better. And this is something the Browns have been able to do with Joe Flacco over the last couple of weeks. This doesn't necessarily suit him. Yeah, it might be a staple of our offense, but it's not working. So let's take that out. Let's put something in that might be more, beneficial to the guy we're currently playing with. For Joe, obviously, it's more the vertical game, and the Texans. And that would makes it difficult for the Browns to game plan here. It's kind of a mystery. They know Case Keenum. Obviously, he spent a couple of seasons with the Cleveland Browns. Didn't play a lot, but did play effective. One thing I do know from, seeing Case Keenum play is, the vertical game is not something, it's going to scare the death out of you, but you're going to be playing, in nice confines, obviously in Houston, where that does obviously aid to the vertical game. So the Browns go into this, it's a little bit of a mystery to play Case Keenum. You don't necessarily have a huge game plan. So the Browns, what do? You make your game plan based on what do we normally do well. Obviously for the Browns, It's having Myles Garrett get whatever pressure he can. And, a lot of people, don't necessarily see the forest through the trees. Oh, Myles Garrett hasn't had a sack in a month. Well, Myles Garrett had 11 pressures last week. Myles Garrett is the number 1 rated edge rusher in the NFL, according to PFF. Myles Garrett, while all this pressure is going towards him, now plays with guys who can win one-on-ones. Zadarius Smith, Alex Wright. So these guys are eating. Dalvin Tomlinson had 4 huge plays within the first 5 snaps last week because obviously all the attention in the world is on 95. Now that he's playing with players more closer to his level, it obviously, it's working in the Browns' favor. The Browns had featured 3 safeties for most of the season in McLeod, obviously Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit. McLeod, Thornhill, Delpit both on IR. Delpit hopefully to return for the playoffs. Thornhill did not practice today. We'll see what his status is. But the Browns roll out undrafted free agent Ronnie Hickman. He puts up a grade of 90 according to PFF. Second-year undrafted free agent.
That's my cousin.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Somewhere in the family tree. I don't know. But
which is funny because Ronnie Hickman's a Jersey boy. And ironically enough, Ronnie Hickman's high school here in Jersey and my high school here in Jersey have played together in 3 straight state semifinals.
Hey.
Ronnie Hickman got one of them.
Yeah.
My high school got 2. Sorry, Ronnie Hickman. I keep bringing that one up, the guy. And then D'Anthony Bell played obviously extremely well. They could get Juan Thornhill back for this week. The cornerback group has been really, really good. And, that's where, Tank Dell obviously out for the season, which is a really tough break because this kid was playing. And you could see he and CJ Stroud just had it right away. And there was going to be something special. And it's going to be special Houston fans for years to come. And then there's Nico Collins. The Browns obviously doing a little bit. Nico Collins played against him last year. They played against Nico Collins in the past. And so for the Browns, it's just do what you do. If, you're the team that looks like they're the team playing better, and obviously there's going to be a team, when you don't have your starting quarterback, that's a really, really difficult blow. I understand the Cleveland Browns. This is just an absolute this is a story that nobody would believe. Like, even if you tried to make it a script, they'd be like, no, I don't want to hear about the 4th quarterback. No, that team would suck. Right. That team would be competing very high for a draft pick. This is a 1 in a million shot that the Cleveland Browns are pulling off what they were doing in the NFL. So for them, it's just to stick to the script. You know who you are. You are confident in who you are. Keep it simple, stupid. You don't do anything extra extraordinary. And when I say that, I mean the reverses that never work, or putting the balls in the other hands of other players to throw passes. That doesn't work. And just, realizing what you have here. Houston is a formidable team. There's a lot of young talent there. They are extremely well coached, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So that is the thing is, don't get greedy. Don't get off your game. Do what you do. Be who you are. And that should lead them to the success they need. But look, Houston, whoever takes that field for them is not going to give up anything.
I do want to say, I think a lot of people are just overlooking the good job. And the Browns have taken a lot of criticism. That $248 million guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson. He hadn't been, on the field for you guys a whole lot. But the talk of the town is right now, who's coach of the year? Mm-hmm. And my number 1 right now, all things considered, I got a tie between Shane Steichen and Demeco Ryans, but nowhere far behind Kevin Stefanski. I think he's done a very good job coaching them this year. I think that with that top defense, they get a lot of credit. But for him to go from Deshaun to PJ to DTR and now Joe Flacco and being able to win some of in the quarterbacks league, by the way, to win some games down the stretch, important games to make the playoffs. And, I give him a lot of credit, which I didn't think Kevin Stefanski was that type of guy. So to see him be a coach of a team that's fighting and clawing for a playoff spot in week 15, week 16, whatever it is right now, I do want to shout him out. I think he's done a very good job. I just wanted to say that. And kudos to the Cleveland Browns organization for being smart and signing a formidable quarterback in Joe Flacco, unlike the New York Jets. Every time I can get a chance to kind of just, talk about him, I'm going to do it. You didn't do it. It turned out to be bad for you. The Cleveland Browns were smart and said, hey, let's go get a guy that has been a winner in the NFL before. And Joe Flacco has looked very, very good for this franchise. So I just want to shout y'all out.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll say about the Coach of the Year thing is, I think where the tough spot for Coach Stefanski to be in is people thought the Cleveland Browns were going to be a good football team.
Right.
And so the fact that it's a weird path on how they got there, does that change it? because this is where everybody kind of thought they were going to be anyway. Did anybody think the Colts were going to have 8 wins at this point of the season? No. Did anybody think the Houston Texans were going to have 8 wins at this point of the season? No. Even still, because you could look at, obviously, Indianapolis, the plan was supposed to be Anthony Richardson. It was most certainly not supposed to be Gardner Minshew. Houston, granted, new coach, everything obviously there, and just obviously hit it really, really quick with CJ Stroud. So we'll see. And, coach of the year. And look, I just want to go playoffs, man. I don't need coach of the year. Coach Fancy's got a coach of the year trophy. I don't need that. He's going to get a nice big bag, 4-year extension, all that good stuff. Coach of the year, I think that is the furthest thing from Coach Kevin Stefanski's mind right now. Probably Demeco Ryans as well. I mean, they'll take the accolades, sure, as they come. But I think these gentlemen are more concerned about making sure that these teams are playing the second weekend in January. We're going to continue here. John Hickman, Jeff Lloyd. We're going to try to create a path to victory for the Texans, the Browns here as we close out Crossover Thursday. Locked On Texans, Locked On Browns. Stick around. Look, it's a weird one. Obviously, Christmas Eve, Sunday, and, we're all going to be the weird one. We're like, I don't care what's going on for the next 3 hours. I got my game to watch. So you can order chips, dips, nachos, or everything you need to make your own nachos on DoorDash and get it all delivered without missing the game. Get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and you enter code LOCKED23, subject to change, terms apply. Get prepared before game day. Stock up on your favorite appetizers and order all your tailgate gear on DoorDash. Then get ready to watch the Texans or the Browns win on Sunday. That's 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Don't forget to use the code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Again, subject to change and terms apply. Closing out here, Crossover Thursday, Locked On Texans, Locked On Browns, Browns host Jeff Lloyd, Texans host John Hickman. And we are, of course, we're always appreciative if everybody makes Locked On Browns and Locked On Texans their first listen. And look, do yourself a favor. The season's getting close to an end here. You want extended football? You need to be. Subscribe to Locked On Texans podcast and the Locked On Browns podcast. Woo! But John, it's early, and it is early, and it seems weird. Now we're talking about Thursday episodes of football podcasts. But the injury world, as the weeks go on in the NFL, I mean, I've been recording Friday nights because how do I do a pregame show if I don't even know who my starting quarterback is? So, I mean, I've had to take this even later into the week. And obviously, you guys are going through the same thing right now. But for the intents and purposes, for the state of the drill, what's the path to victory here for the Houston Texans on Sunday?
Oh, man. Again, Joe Flacco is an old quarterback. There's nowhere around it. And kudos to this offensive line. I think all year they've been doing a very good job, especially as of late. But the Texans defensive line, who just came off of having defense, just came off of having 7 sacks, a boatload of QB hits, a boatload of pressures, a boatload of tackles for loss. The defense has to go win this game for them. I really believe it comes down to the trenches matchup, right? Make Joe Flacco uncomfortable in the pocket, because if he's uncomfortable and if you can get at him and make 2nd and 8 turn into 2nd and 13 and make those downs, the distance is a little bit difficult, then I think Houston has a real shot. Obviously, no pedestrian player, and that's no disrespect to anybody on the Cleveland Browns roster, but Amari Cooper can go out and have the day that he can have, right? But and Njoku, I think that's a great matchup. But nobody that can be an X factor on this team that beats the Houston Texans. So I think ultimately, overall, this is a defensive game for Houston that they're going to have to create turnover. They're going to have to create pressure. Shout out to Sam's Chicken, some pressure that I had out there one time. But this defense is going to have to be the driving force for this team to win games. And when it comes down to scoring points, every opportunity that this team gets in the red zone, you need 7. 3 is not going to cut it.
Well, and this is the thing for the Cleveland Browns, because, look, unless something miraculously shakes out here, The Cleveland Browns, if in fact they do go to the playoffs, this is going to be a party they're going to be taking on the road. They are a team that is currently 7-1 at home with one more home game to go. Obviously, already have 4 losses on the road. You need to find a way to basically make all this game travel. The defense, the offense, the special teams, it's all got to go with you if you want to succeed in the playoffs, obviously, when you're going to be going on the road. So you're going to Houston, obviously, weather right out the window. You don't have to worry about it. You don't know if that's going to be the factor against the Jets in Week 17. You certainly don't know if that could be a factor in Week 18 when they make the trip south to Cincinnati. But you've got to find a way. And for the Browns, another thing, as the success has gone up with the passing game, as they've won their last few games, one of the things that this team has always done well during the Kevin Stefanski regime is run the ball. That is almost to the point where it is non-existent. A couple of weeks ago, I was sitting here saying, I don't care if it's producing yards, continue to show run. We went into last week, and I said, if it ain't working, throw it the hell out, because you got a 6'6", 240-pound quarterback who's obviously very fresh and should be able to throw it 40-plus times if you have to. Well, that's starting to become the MO. But Joe's going to be 39 in January. You can't expect Joe to be throwing the pill around the field 40 times a week, each and every week. So the Browns would like to have this running game return. They would like to have some semblance of a running game. Jerome Ford, in a crazy world, still could find a way and sneak into 1,000 yards here. It's getting late as far as that's concerned. Kareem Hunt has done his job, but it's just kind of like hammer and nail. You need 1.5, I'm going to get you 2. You need 2.25, I'm going to get you 2.5. Mm-hmm. It's nothing flashy, but he's doing what needs to be done. They've been trying to incorporate Pierre Strong into this. The most athletically gifted running back they have, great speed, but it's kind of a tell because they don't trust him to block. So if Pierre Strong comes on the field, they're either handing it to him or they're throwing a screen pass to him. So It's kind of like, even if he is that athletic, everybody kind of understand there's a really good chance he's getting the ball if he comes on the field. Part of the running game and lack of success has certainly been that you are now playing with your 4th and 5th offensive tackles. There were a couple snaps last week where they actually played their 3rd-string center. Joe Bitonio left after 11 plays last week. They looks like they might be trending towards having their Wyatt Teller, Ethan Posick, Joe Bitonio back for this week. And this was a team that always ran that wide zone. Well, maybe it's time to start looking what we can do on the interior and maybe some inside zone, because this is maybe where your better players are, and guys who aren't totally common with the outside zone scheme, they're not getting it done, and they become wasted plays. They become wasted at bats where the Browns are going, from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 11. If that's the case, I'd rather just have another passing attempt. But at some point to close out a regular season, to be successful in the postseason, you need some part of a running game. We've tried to go away.
We know that here in Houston.
Yep, we've tried to go away from predictions. Obviously, this late in the season, it's really difficult to do them here. I think we all kind of know maybe CJ Stroud's not playing the Browns, and everybody saw the injury report. And it's bad when the injury reports come out and we all open our phones and we got to go and keep going like this because all right, so I counted 8 DNPs. I got 4 limiteds. I got and then you got to scroll into he's resting, and and you see rest next to the guy's name, but it's knee, back, but rest. Well, which one is it? Was it the knee? Was it the back? Or you just wanted to give him a day off? But this is a big one here. And obviously, I think, for Houston, just from my standpoint, Houston somehow, some way just wants that 9th victory.
I think this is going to be a close game. Listen, in one possession games, Houston right now is 5-3 on the year. In some of those one possession games, they've either clawed their way back, but we've seen them where they had to fight off teams. And so Houston has been able to get up on some of these guys. But I think, honestly, this is a playoff game. This is a playoff game. Last week was a playoff game, and the defensive performance was stellar, best of the season. So when I look at the driving force again, I think Houston defensively, they're going to be nasty. They're going up against a nasty team in the Cleveland Browns. But I don't think this is a game where we're looking at a 10-point victory. I don't see a 17-10. I mean, a 7-17 victory. I don't see a 21-10. I see a 17-14, 19-16, a very close game that comes down to the last couple of drives in the fourth quarter because of the quarterback play, and you don't have Deshaun. Houston doesn't have CJ, and your playmakers aren't all healthy or out on the field. So I think it's going to be a tough game. But this season's history has showed us, out of the 8 times in those one possession games, Houston has won 5 times. So I'm going to take the odds on that.
Well, and the thing is the Cleveland Browns are the 60-minute men. It's 60 minutes each and every week. We are there till the final 0-0-0-0. That's just the way. Would the Browns love a laugher? Would they love one to be over a little earlier? Yeah, sure. But that hasn't happened since about week 3 for the Cleveland Browns. But either way, we gave you as much info as we possibly can at this point in the week. Obviously, the Texans, a great season coming out of the chute here. Rookie quarterback, head coach, some real foundation building for what should be a solid presence in the AFC for the next few years. For the Browns, a lot of people didn't want to think this is what they were capable of. This is what they were capable of, and they're certainly showing out. We appreciate all of you who tuned in today. Make sure you're following and subscribe to the Locked On Texans podcast. Same thing for the Locked On Browns podcast. For myself, Jeff Lloyd, for Mr. John Hickman, we wish you guys a Merry Christmas. Everybody enjoy the game on Sunday. Enjoy yourselves, enjoy your family, and we appreciate each and every one of you for listening.
Until next time.